Hey guys, in today's video we're going to talk about distressing fabric. Now this is primarily for denim fabrics. It can work on heavyweight denim or lightweight stretch denim. The techniques can be used on any of the fabrics. You just might see a slightly different result depending on the type of fabric that you're working with. Now I want to encourage you to not be afraid to use the distressing techniques on your garments. It doesn't mean you have to cut a big hole in a pair of jeans. It simply is giving it that authentic worn look so that the garments and the items look like real authentic pieces of clothing, just really small. So you'll do some distressing and some wear around the hemlines, on the tips or points of the collar, the places where the garment folds the most frequently when it's worn. All those types of areas, distressing them slightly will really help you have a very cool, very on trend, and very realistic looking garment for your doll. So let's jump in and I'm going to show you a few quick distressing techniques. Okay, so in front of us right here we have some sample garments that already have some distressing on them. Some garments up here that we need to do distressing on, and then all the supplies needed for the different techniques I'm going to illustrate. So the first supply that's pretty common is sandpaper. So right here I have black sandpaper and this tan sandpaper, and this is a very fine grit, not very coarse. You can use a coarser sandpaper to really eat into the fabric, but I find that this works really well, especially to create this type of whiskering, which is generally found on the fronts of a pair of jeans, like where the legs would crease when she's sitting down, and so you get those whisker effects right there, and that works really well for that. Now another tool that we use is a seam ripper and a sharp pair of scissors, and that is for the technique that you see here where the threads going horizontally across the fabric are left intact, and you can see that right there, but the threads going up and down are removed. So you do that very carefully with your seam ripper and your scissors, and then you have some areas of distressing like that, which can look very nice on around pockets, on the knees, sometimes even on the elbow. Any distressing like that is a great technique, gives it a nice authentic worn-in look. The seam ripper is also great for fraying the edges. So this pair of denim shorts right here has a very natural frayed hemline. So we'll use the seam ripper to create this type of effect as well. Now one other tool that you can use, and this is a very large kitchen grater. So this is just for illustration, I'm showing you right here that these smaller sides of a grater, and you can find a handheld flat grater which would just be this one side for zesting, and that can work really well to really kind of grind into the fabric and create some interesting looking texture by rubbing that on this type of grater. And here's a close-up look of the points of the collar that I mentioned. We have a distressed edge right there on the corner, this folded edge, how the collar folds down, the tips and corners of this jacket here, around the buttons, a little bit of light distressing right here in between the stitching lines. The edges of the pocket have been rubbed, and this is all done with the sandpaper. Another area that's good to do is an elbow. So if you want to rub out on the backs of the elbows, just line that up on your doll first. Mark your area, and then you can do a little bit of distressing like that. Now these are two different size dolls. Obviously these are a much bigger pair of pants, but I'm just going to show you the first and most important thing that you're going to want to do is look at how the pants fit the body, and then find the areas where the most natural distressing would occur. So the whiskering that I showed you on the pair of shorts happens right in this area at the hip where the leg meets the body. So those are the areas that you can mark and use a sandpaper to create the whiskering. The knees are the other area. So you can either mark that with a pen, you can mark it with a pin and then just pull the pants off. You can also do sandpaper distressing while the pants are on. Sometimes it's helpful, sometimes it's a little bit challenging, but it would give you a nice way to add some wear to just this top edge of the thigh in that round motion, since that's a natural style of distressing on jeans as well. And then on the back, the one area that you'd probably want to distress is just below the stitching on the hemline. So the first technique that I'm going to demonstrate is the sandpaper whiskering. So we want to have that happen right in this area. So I'm just going to fold the fabric in a line and take the sandpaper and just rub right over that. And you just do that a few times, and you'll see that you start to get some whiskered looks. So what you want to do is have a few separated, going in a little bit different direction. That gives it sort of a natural, authentic look. Now, if you take the top edge of the pocket, you can also sand that lightly right on there, and you can see that denim just starts to turn a little bit white, which creates a nice natural look. Now you just want to be really careful when you're doing that here, that you don't sand over this top stitching because it will break the thread. So you just carefully sand along that edge, just like that. Then you can do the same thing on the top edge of the back pocket. So you can see there we've got some nice rubbing there. And then down at the bottom of the pants, and then the same tip down here. You just want to be really careful not to sand the threads on that stitching line because they will break. So there's that sandpaper, whiskering, and edging technique. Now you could sand the knee area, which I can show you right here if we sand, and I would sand against the grain of the fabric. I think you'll get a better wear that way. And you can see that starts to just give it a nice worn in look. Now you could do that and leave it, and that looks fine. It looks great. But if you want to give it the look of the white threads that stretch across like a cutout opening, here's how you would do that. So we'll do that on the other knee. Now we're gonna pick our placement of the knee, and then we are gonna take our scissors, and this does require cutting. So this is one of those ones that I'm sure might intimidate you, but just realize you cut along the top and you cut along the bottom, and then that's it. In between those two cuts, we're just gonna remove the threads. So I'm just gonna fold the pants in half so that I have just the front, and I'm gonna cut a slit into the front of the pants. Just like this. So you have two slits that just go across over that knee opening, and then we're gonna take our seam ripper, and the first few threads are gonna be the hardest to remove just because everything is so tight in here. But if you come in and you start to pull out just the blue thread, and you just go through and you just carefully pull that out, being very careful not to pull or break any of the white threads which are going across. So we're working to remove just the threads that are going vertically and you can see those starting to come out now. So once you have those loosened, they will just pull out. So now I can pull that, and you can see that I have those white threads now exposed right here that are going across. So then I'm just going to work my way in both directions to the edges of these slits to pull this all the way out. And there you have that technique shown for this knee. Now, one other thing that you can do on the back side of this, because as you dress the doll, their foot might poke into a hole that's actually this big. So you could always go underneath this and either just put a piece of fusible interfacing under the whole thing just to keep it nice and tight and flat. So then it's just more decorative than anything else. Or you can actually put a piece of fabric under there and stitch carefully around the edge or use just a thin piece of interfacing around the edge to secure that there. So the patch fabric would kind of peek through under these strings, and that's a different technique just to reinforce that so that you don't have a foot poke through there and actually tear this into a big hole. To create a frayed edge on the hemline of your garment that has a finished look, the technique that I like to use is this right here, where you will go through and stitch a straight stitched line just above the hemline, about 1/8 of an inch. And then once you have that stitch line there, it'll reinforce the edge, give it a finished look, and then you go through and you fray out this part of the hemline that's below the stitching. So you're going to use your seam ripper in the same technique, removing the threads carefully that go across this time and leaving just the ones that are vertical. So we've done that as well on these white shorts, and you can see here this is a thicker denim, and so it's created a very soft, almost kind of fluffy frayed look, which is a nice authentic look as well. And then this is stitched with white thread, so you really don't see that as much, but it still helps provide a blocking point so that it doesn't continue to fray up the entire garment. So here's a mini skirt, and this one has already been stitched. We did a double stitch line along the hemline, and then we have just a cut raw edge of fabric. So you can see here on this bottom edge of the skirt, the fabric is all still intact below that stitching line. So this is the raw edge of the fabric. So I'm just going to carefully go straight down, removing those threads. And at some point, I'm going to need to come in with the scissors, and I will trim them off before they hit a stitching line so that I don't cut through any existing stitch at the side seam or at the center front or center back. So you can see that start to take effect right there. You see the threads are now loose and they're able to create the frayed look right up to the stitching line. So then we would just keep doing that all the way around the entire hemline. So there you can see the frayed edge and then the edge that we haven't done yet. So you can see the difference in how the bottom edge of this skirt will look once we've completed that technique. And then to finish it up, I'm just going to show you quickly some of the effect you'll get if you use something like a grater. So if you have your denim, and if this was a pair of jeans, and you could always do this ahead of time, test it out, make sure you like how it looks, and then place your pattern piece on it in the appropriate location. But if I just pull this over that, you'll see that I start to get just some like torn look in there. So that will really start to pull out threads. It gets it fuzzy. This will also react really well to roughing up the fabric and then throwing it all in the washing machine and the dryer. It'll actually go ahead and remove more of the color and give it an even more worn-in look. So you could take a tool like this and go all over a piece of fabric and really just get lots of worn-in little bits and pieces all over the placement of the fabric, and then go back and place your pattern piece and really kind of use that to the best that you can. But this is great. You can go against the grain, you can go with the grain, and it'll really shred that fabric pretty quickly. So that's on that side. This side, not quite as sharp, but it would still do the same thing. So that's just a different tool, different application. All right, guys, I hope those techniques really were easy to follow and easy to understand, and I challenge you to pick one and apply it to one of the items that you've made. And then jump on over to the Facebook group and be sure to show us. We really want to see these techniques in action, and I think it'll help inspire and motivate others to use those techniques on the pieces that they've created as well.